Welcome, everybody, to the Old Gold Show with you, as always, from over at hammerandrails.com. I'm Andrew Ledman.
And I'm Casey. We don't storm the court, Bartley. Boiler Upload, Rivals Network.
That's good. Casey likes to give himself little nicknames. I thought he was going to go with something like Nostradamus or some sort of soothsayer because Casey got two things right about this game against the Alabama Crimson Tide, where Purdue was victorious 87-78 over the number two team in the country. Casey picked Purdue to win. I did not. I was cowardly. I went and said Purdue would lose this one just by a few points, but nevertheless, Casey got it right. He also said that Caleb First would have a good game, would play a lot of minutes, and would have an impactful role in this game. And guess what happened? Caleb First played 13 minutes, 13 impactful minutes. So Casey was right on in both his predictions. So
Yeah,
kudos.
I don't think I would have picked 4 or 5 from the free throw line as being one of his biggest things.
True.
But yeah, defense's ability to be quick off the pick and roll just it gives Biggs problems because he moves so well. And that's how he draws 4 fouls in 13 minutes. I think we can go even farther, Ledman. I
Okay.
also said one of the things Purdue needed to do, one of the things they would do is treat TKR like Edie. Feed him the ball over and
Yeah,
over
he
and
got the
over
ball a
again.
lot.
Grant Nelson was always going to be mismatched down low. There was no way Alabama wasn't going to have a lot of minutes where they had Nelson on TKR. Obviously, Cliff was better, really good in the post. Part of why TKR's efficiency numbers don't look quite as good because Cliff might be the best post defender in the country outside of Kalkbrenner.
He looked good.
But I think it speaks to it speaks to two things. Speaks to one, Purdue's versatility on offense and how they're never really going to struggle against teams because they can attack them in so many different ways. First of all, everything works better when you have shooting. Purdue has shooting everywhere.
Yeah.
Second of all, when you have a point guard as good as Braden Smith and you have that pick and roll option and his ability to get to the rim, find open shooters, that's going to work. And if you somehow are able to contain both of those things, you're telling me you also have a guy down low that can stop one of the best offensive threats in the post in the country? I don't think you do because no one does. Literally,
Right.
not a team in the world can stop all three of those layers at all
Yeah,
times.
that's tough. That's
And
tough.
Purdue is close to elite at all three levels.
Ooh. He's throwing out the E word.
And here is my, maybe like once an episode, I ask the audience to look me in the eyes, get real close, let's
Yeah.
get a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There are like 300 some college basketball teams.
Right.
There's a lot of them.
There are.
And when you turn on ESPN, even when you turn on like our mother loads over at Field of 68, they have to be experts for like 150 teams.
Yeah. It's a lot of
They are
teams.
watching Kentucky and Duke and having a bunch of opinions and interesting conversations one night. Then they're talking about, Maryland and Notre Dame another night. And it is really hard for a national team. Apparently, it's really hard for a national coach to have the proper opinion on teams that they don't see very often.
Oh, I see where you're going. I see where you're going.
So here in the conference, in a little media scrum after the game, Nate Oats,
Head coach of
very
Alabama, for
head
those
coach of
not
Alabama,
familiar.
very smart guy, well
Yes,
dressed, very well dressed.
he does. He's a
He's
sharp
smart.
dresser.
He's more well dressed. Like out of all his characteristics, well dressed is probably the top of the list for
I
him.
I feel like that's a backhanded compliment.
No, no, no. He's really well dressed. I
Okay.
don't know if you ever watched White Collar on a USA
I did
Network.
not. I did
I
not.
loved White Collar. Great suits. He would fit in perfectly on White Collar. That's as good of a compliment as I can give Ledman.
He did. I mean, he is a sharp dresser. It's you can't take anything away from
Yeah.
him there.
So as he's talking to us, he says this thing once and he says it like 3 times. And it baffles my mind. And he's like, we didn't know A, Trey Kaufman Wren was that good. B, that they were going to give him the ball that much. I sent you a message after it happened. I wrote it on
You
Twitter. There were
did. You
replies.
did.
It's so strange to me because, like I said before the game, I said, what did Purdue need to do? Give TKR the ball all the time. It's not like that came out of nowhere. It's because Purdue gets the ball to TKR inside a lot. It's what they want to do. It's a big
Well,
identity of what Matt Painter's offense is.
let me, far be it from me to
Mhm.
defend Coach Oates here.
Mhm.
Uh, but that is not really, TKR hasn't been that guy. He wasn't that guy last year because of Zach Edey.
Right.
He had a role, of course. He was very good last year. But this year, he really has taken a huge step forward. And given that it's only the fourth game of the season, I could understand why he would say, we just didn't know he was that good. He's every bit as good as advertised. I agree with that part of it, but you have to know they're going to get in the ball.
Correct. My point is that it is excusable for him not to know with certainty
Okay,
4 games into a season.
sure.
It's excusable for when you turn on these national shows right now. A lot of the talking point is didn't know Trey could do that.
Yeah.
Didn't know, like, thought he was a bit player last year because he was playing next to Zach Edey because he couldn't do what he was really good at.
Hmm.
And, but if you turn on our show and our conversations about Trey Kaufman Wren, if you go on Boiler in the Stands and listen to them talk about Purdue, Gold and Black Illustrated, Hammer and Rails, Trey Kaufman Wren is not an unknown to us.
No.
Trust Purdue is so lucky to have such a strong fan base that it can support this many different media outlets.
Yeah, that's true.
And look, not every Purdue person is a genius. Not all of them are, Nostradamus. Not all of them know, but like there are so many dudes and women that are locked in on the Purdue front that
Yeah.
know what they're talking about. Go support them, go watch them. Let those opinions get to you more than the national media. Whether it's
Yeah.
the praise because they're surprised or the insults because they don't really know. You are lucky to be a Purdue fan to have so many different voices that you can go to that are all like really good at what they do. And you will be a better fan if you listen to them more than you do national media.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to your point, it is there are so many college basketball teams, as you said, over 300. And yes, not all of them are really going to be, contenders or in a national spotlight. But even if you take the ones that you're going to see on ESPN, CBS, Fox, you're looking at 100 plus teams. And to
Yeah.
be able to even have a competent sentence about 100 plus teams is incredibly difficult. So I think, now that we've got Casey's kudos out of the way, let's take a break, come back and talk about how Purdue really just was in control for the vast majority of this game against the number 2 Alabama Crimson Tide. We'll be right back. And we are back. So Purdue coming into this game, number 13, had a 38 game winning streak in the non-conference, including numerous wins over top 10 teams. Alabama coming in number 2, really thought of as a team that could go all the way this year, national title game, maybe even win it all. Purdue was in control for most of this game. There was a period in the second half when Alabama got up 6 where it kind of looked like they might be able to pull away. They started hitting some tough shots, but then a hero emerged in front of us. CJ Cox hit 9 points in a span of about 54 seconds, all from the 3-point line. Casey, can you just explain what that moment was like in Mackey Arena and how CJ Cox got there?
It was like the perfect confluence of events, right? Because first, it's kind of slow mo the way that CJ got into that first shot. You could tell he had a half step, and like if you're familiar with Cox, like very comfortable shooting off the dribble. It's kind of the shot he's looking for. And you could also see the Alabama guy kind of foul him early and foul him again through the shot. So like you already know that whistle's coming, then it drops. And like you could tell Braden Smith's on the bench, the lead goes away. Mackey's like just on the verge of like, uh-oh, this is kind of what we thought might happen.
Right.
And then just drops. Boom. Then Miles Colvin gets the block.
Yeah, the block.
And the block was by far the best play of the game, if you ask me. Just
Yeah.
incredible body control, length, athleticism. Like Colvin was so good on defense. And then Cox just straight into another one. Just perfect balance. And there's certain dudes that shoot, and like it just seems like there is a, in video games where there's like an auto aim.
Yeah.
So like it kind of moves, but like then it's
Yep.
like gravity fed. And his shots are like that. It's just like, oh, those are being guided by something.
Yeah.
And then the third time, he walks it up slowly enough that like everyone in the crowd is like already buzzing, and the screen is getting set up, and you're like, is he, is he, is he gonna? And he got just enough space and just quick splash and just
Yeah.
pandemonium. And like for like Smith and the guys to like get a freshman to like pull like the energy just yelling at the crowd. Like there's a lot of yelling at the crowd this year. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of Purdue like that is the Braden Smith effect. Just just straight energy poured into Mackey, and we had talked about it. Mackey hadn't got there yet this year. It got there, 123.7 decibels, very close to the record. And yeah, it was just from the get go. The Mackey Arena fans started a slow clap with 5 minutes left before the game. Okay, locked in.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you that CJ Cox moment when he hit the first one, I'm sitting on my couch. I do a fist pump in the air. Second one, I jump up at the couch, do a fist pump. Third one, I'm just like jumping off the couch, running toward the TV, doing a fist bump. I mean, that was one of the best sequences I've seen
Mhm.
from any one player. I mean, because the shots were so perfect. It would have been even better if he would have hit that free throw, but he couldn't connect on the 4-point play. But really after that, it really felt like Purdue was in control, and they kind of took over from there. But we need to back up because the first half, Purdue led almost the entire way. And that was to your first point in the first half of the podcast. Trey Kaufman-Renn just absolutely dominating. Foul trouble for
Mhm.
basically anybody who was over 6'7" for Purdue. But they
And
found a
Braden.
way, yeah, and Braden too. But they found a way to keep them all in the game. You mentioned that Nelson wasn't able to really match up with Trey Kaufman-Renn. Um, what was it that Painter saw in the Alabama defense that allowed him to find success with Trey Kaufman-Renn, with Caleb First? I mean, even Raleigh Burgess, he played for 4 minutes and he had 5 points. The center position we thought was such a problem, but Painter found such productivity from them in this game against the number 2 team in the country.
Yeah, we can't go further without mentioning that Purdue had 3 turnovers.
Yeah, only one in the first
Unbelievable stat.
half.
3 turnovers in a high leverage game like this, in a back and forth, like quick game like this, that is as shocking a stat as you will ever see in a game. It's twofold, right? Like you can't ever count on that low of a turnover
Right.
because like it's super, but it also shows that this team does have like it in them to protect the ball. Last year, going into Edie so much, kind of the way they played, you're going to have a few more turnovers than when you have a few more ball handlers getting it. And Trey, like for his credit, doesn't turn the ball over down low. It's a shot, or he's been really good at finding open dudes, and he's just been really patient with it. But just being able to actually take care of the ball in a way where, like, Matt Painter gripes and wishes for less turnovers every game.
Hmm.
And when you have three, there's no complaint there. It's
Yeah.
perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So that's the first thing. Second thing, Purdue's bigs really set good screens. I thought Trey was excellent at like giving Smith space. I think you see how easy it is to play teams when they drop, when you have someone like Braden Smith. Because if you're dropping with the big guy and you're getting a screen, like there's just space.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, Smith, he's not working in congestion. Like there might not be as many open shooters off of it. And he didn't shoot the ball well, like 6 of
No.
18. But I think this is the first game of the season that he didn't start off by hitting a pull up three. Like he missed the one on the first play that was wide
Yeah.
open.
Hmm.
And Braden Smith's awesome at shooting. Like let him have those. Keep
Right.
shooting.
Yeah.
Um, so and just it is so tiring to take on the Purdue offense. It just runs.
Yeah.
Like they run stuff every possession. Whether it's just getting Trey the ball inside, they do it great. Braden Smith, some of the interior passes he made from outside the perimeter were unbelievable. He sees angles and like keeps the ball low and just elite execution. And
Yeah.
if you're going to have that much skill and execution on offense with those kind of skilled players, that's the number one that steps out to me most. And the big guys were definitely a part of it. Burgess hitting the three, the putback, really good. Caleb first, quick on the pick and rolls. He set some really good screens. He just moves so well that he puts defenses in jeopardy right away. And Trey Kaufman-Rin is an absolute star. Stud. Absolute
Yeah.
star. Wilberg,
He had
he
some
hasn't finished a
problems.
game for a reason.
No, and I mean he only
And
got
that's fine.
9 minutes in this one. Only got 9 minutes.
Yeah. And I think that is going to be the trend for most of the year.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's going to be a lot of Trey and a lot of Caleb, especially if they can handle it. And like if they played like they did
Yeah.
against Alabama, they can handle it. We'll see when teams have bigger dudes that can bang bang. Um, but the second thing that stands out to me, how good we talked about CJ Cox, just how good this bench is.
Yeah.
Because it's not just guys that can come out and play. A little bit last year, like you talk about Cam Heide and Miles Colvin, like they did some good things, but like they were just like good bodies to have out there. They weren't net
Yeah.
negatives, weren't really net positives consistently. Now we're talking about like Miles Colvin didn't take a shot, and that might have been the
20,
best Purdue game
yeah.
he played.
20 minutes he played, didn't take a shot, yet again, might have been his best game. I mean, if you take a tape of that game and you go back 1 year and show it to us, it's a different player.
Yeah, who? What?
Miles Colvin could not do that last year. The improvement he's shown on the defensive end, I mean, is absolutely incredible. It is remarkable. Um, and if he can step into that role of coming off the bench, being able to shut down one of the best players on the other team, it reminds you of a guy like Ethan Morton, but Miles Colvin obviously much better on offense.
Right.
So if you can not play 5-on-4 like Purdue often did when Morton was on there, I mean that's just an incredible upgrade.
Yeah, there's really no 5-on-4 offensive lineup
No,
for Purdue this year. Um, and then you keep going down the list. Camden Heide, 23 minutes, 8 rebounds,
yeah,
a couple really key ones late. Purdue's
yeah,
not
Purdue needed
perfect. Like
those.
like they still like Alabama kept it in it because they kept getting offensive rebounds and scoring a
Yeah,
three off of it. Like that's
yeah, and
because
they got a lot
besides
of
that,
they got a lot of like scramble rebounds,
mhm,
and Purdue has a hand on it and can't get it rebounds. So like you would love to see those cleaned up. So you're seeing the effort from Purdue on
right.
getting the rebounds this time, but they're still not able to corral them.
Yeah, without those offensive rebounds, which I mean they did it. They earned them. You can't take them away. But like that
Hmm.
was literally the only thing Purdue did wrong for the last 10 minutes. They played a perfect
Yeah,
last 10 minutes against the number 2 team in the nation. Like unbelievably great. And like Cam Heide and Miles Colvin were huge parts of that. Cam Heide knocking down shots again, like it was obviously a 2 game blip. As much as he got some experience last year, he was injured, he redshirted. Like his game time experience is still not nearly high compared to what a lot of the other guys were. Needed a couple games to get into it, and now I think Heidi is back to being an elite shooter, elite wing depth. great rebounder. So it's just the guys that come off the bench now are so impactful. And Purdue, for as great as Purdue was last year, there was a significant step off when Painter went to the bench.
Yeah, for sure. For
I
sure.
don't think that exists this year. And
Yeah,
when you can
definitely
play
not as
40 minutes
much.
that way, that's tough for teams to handle.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to your point that you kind of started this on is it's so hard to play defense against this Purdue offense because they run sets, everybody is moving. Even if they do get the ball to Trey, it's not as if like it's just four guys standing around waiting to get the ball to Trey. It's
Yeah.
they're moving, they're coming off screens, they're working hard and it doesn't matter what five guys are out there, they're still working hard. Now, I want to point out a couple stats that stood out to me again. We went into this game knowing that Alabama loves to shoot the three. They took 29 threes in
Mhm.
this game, only made nine of them, 31%, which is about where they are this season. But we know obviously they shot a lot better than that last season. Purdue, by comparison, shot 16 threes, made nine of them for a 56% clip. I mean, that is great right there. Purdue did struggle at the free throw line, 16 of 25, and that really is the one area where Trey has struggled this season. He was
Right.
1 of 4, and one of them, I believe, he missed two in a row, or maybe I think he missed actually three in a row on consecutive trips. So would love to see Purdue clean that up. But I mean, if they can continue to shoot 56 from three,
Right.
it might cover that up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you hate missing free throws, but like it's still a net positive. You
Sure.
draw fouls, you get
Sure.
closer to getting um yeah, and there's like Painter says it after every game because it's a helpless thing. Like they're not trying to miss it.
You're right. Yeah.
They practice free throws. It's
Right.
just you some people are just great at free throws. We still haven't mentioned Fletcher Loyer today.
Right.
Played really well again.
31 minutes.
And like I think like physically he's obviously gotten a little bigger and stronger this year. And this isn't just code word talking with Fletcher. Like he does look a little thicker, but more so because of the way the offense is working this year, because of the movement, because Edie's not locked inside, it's so much easier for him to know that he's going to have some space in that intermediate range where he's really good.
Yeah.
And he knocked down a couple floaters that were tough on the run. And those baskets are huge because it's taken some leverage off of Braden Smith, taking some pressure off other people. Like you can go to Lawyer when you need a good play. And that's just another like there's just not many teams that have that many options.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Lawyer is like one of the best.
and he also still was 3 of 5 from three. He shot
Hey,
six.
another buzzer beater.
He shot, yes,
We have to rank him.
60% from three in this game, and it lowered his season average. I mean, and yeah, I mean that three to end the half, just I mean, absolutely cold blooded.
It's
Um,
it's going to be harder now because there's like 18 teams in the Big Ten.
literally.
But like Purdue has three first team All Big Ten caliber players.
Yeah, I mean, it looks that way right now. I
They
mean,
just
who do
do.
you leave off?
Right. Like I'm not, especially if they win for the third straight time.
Yeah,
Like that would mean Braden Smith, Fletcher Loyer, Drake Hoffman Wren have never not been champions.
that would be wild.
Never. They and like, guess what? They come back for their senior year.
Right. Yeah.
Has
Well,
a
we're getting
class swept the Big Ten?
I don't think so.
This is what happens, Ledman. Everyone was all down on Purdue, even though I mean they're still like ranked like 14th, 13th. So like even
Yeah.
even the narrative like people down on Purdue was like overstated because like they're a top 15 team. Like
Yeah.
they've been given some respect, but like they're obviously right now today a top 5 team.
Well, it was like they mentioned that on the broadcast yesterday. Obviously, I know you were in the arena, but they were talking about how this Purdue team, like most teams, will find things that people say and take them as a slight and use them as
Disrespect it.
motivation. Exactly. It's Purdue against the world, or
Put it on the
us against
bulletin board.
everybody. Yeah. And they talked about how Braden Smith, a lightly recruited player, didn't get much respect, and he's used that his whole life now to become the player he is. So I think it's just another example of no one really believed that Purdue was going to be as good as they are when Zach Edey walks out the door. And I mean, I'm among those people. I know this team. I watch this team. I know this team. But when you lose the two-time National Player of the Year,
Mhm.
you're going to regress a little bit. And it's not just Zach Edey. It's also Mason Gillis. It's also Lance Jones. We didn't know who was going to be a secondary ball handler for this team. And people are stepping up to take that role. I don't know that there's really one person who has kind of solidified it. We've seen Cox do it. We've seen Harris do it.
I think
Loyer is doing it some,
I I
obviously, but
I think Colvin, like,
yeah,
as far as like fill a gap, like if you're talking about missing what like Lance Jones brought, which I think
yeah,
if you're talking about like Mason Gillis, obviously very important. Purdue doesn't get to where they get without him.
yeah.
But I think it wasn't Cam Heide was already doing like 80% of what Mason Gillis was doing.
Sure, sure. They're similar. Yeah,
But like there was 100% gap that Lance Jones needed filled. Obviously, Jakari Harris inserted into that spot is kind of the first idea of who's going to do it.
yeah.
Jakari didn't play poorly. Defensively was better against Sears than he was Pulikitas. But like through no fault really of Harris, Colvin's just playing better. And
Yeah,
Colvin is providing the Lance Jones stuff. The
yeah.
super defense, the 3-point shooting, the energy. The kid is so quiet off the court.
Jakari is.
Doesn't no, Miles.
Oh,
He's
Miles.
so soft spoken. And that dude launches himself above the
Into
tunnel
the
right in
yeah.
front of paint crew. Maybe the greatest picture in Purdue basketball
It was pretty
history.
cool. It was pretty cool.
And just like becomes a monster on the court.
Yeah,
Two big blocks on maybe the national player of the year. One-on-one isolation, just I'm going to take your stuff. You
yeah,
don't have a say in it. This is a wild revelation.
yeah.
He's probably going to start maybe as soon as Marquette.
You think so?
I
In
don't
in place of Harris, or
for two straight yes. And like it's not a demotion or says anything about Harris. Painter for the last two games is just like Colvin is helping
yeah,
himself out.
he's for sure.
He, do you know what that means? That means he gets to go back for seconds. He
Yeah.
gets to eat more. The buffet
So
is his.
I mean, we talked about I think basically everyone at this point, but like, what does Purdue do with Will Berg? Nine
Let him
minutes
do.
out of your center position.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's fine. He
okay,
I I think as long as Purdue is in a spot where Berg isn't needed, when he plays well, he plays well. When it's a good matchup, fine. But I think you know your money lineup. Purdue knew its money lineup last. The 5 this year is like the 4 last year. You're going to start a certain way because it makes sense for the first few minutes, and then you move away from it if you need. And when you close, you knew Mason Gillis was coming in at the 4 late game, and now you know Trey's going to play the 5. Heidi, probably Colvin, maybe Cox are going to play around them, but it's in crunch time. You're just going to put Trey at the 5, and then you have 5 or 6 other options that you feel better about than Will Berg, and that's fine. Like Berg was never going to be a 25-minute player. There's too many
sure,
gaps in
sure,
his game, and it's working. Like Purdue's getting off to good starts. He does good things to start a game.
yeah.
He sets really good screens. He gets Braden Smith room. He draws fouls. That's fine. And when things get fast, it's not really his strong suit. That's fine.
Right. And this, to crunch time point, I looked yesterday during the game when we got to the under four. Painter goes into the timeout. I was really interested to see who came out of the huddle onto the floor. The score at that point was 78-71. Painter sends out Smith, Trey Kaufman, Wren, Loyer, Cox, and Heidi as his crunch time five right there. Now, obviously, for the remainder of the 4 minutes, it changed a little bit. People came and went, but those were the five that he sent out there and felt comfortable with. I mean, it made sense to me. Colvin came back in there at the end as well. But I felt pretty comfortable with those five guys on the floor in that moment. And
Yep.
I think it's incredible that Cox has already made his way into that group.
I mean, it's an anecdote that I've said on here before that I'll probably say 400 times before his career's over. Because sometimes you just know the story of a guy and it just makes perfect sense. Talk to his AAU coach. He's on a team with like 8 Division I guys. He's like, it was never our plan for Cox to be our number one guy. And it just kept happening every season. And he just has that kind of way about him. When he's on the floor, he kind of just takes over in little bits. And like he's been really good. Obviously, it's Braden Smith's team. It's Trey Kaufman Wren's team. It's Fletcher Loyer's team. But to have a true freshman already able to just entirely step up and play that way, like that's exciting for Purdue's future. And the fact they have like 3 or 4 guys like that off the bench is it bodes very well in the very immediate future.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has. Here's my question for you: Has does that Alabama win in these first 4 games? Does it change the potential of this team this year for you?
Yes, it does.
Because you thought Sweet
Because
16, right?
yeah, yeah. And
And
I
like they
just
still
think,
might go to the Sweet 16 because tournament's crazy.
sure, sure. I just think Alabama is such a talented team, and they're a team who has the type of team who has given Purdue so much trouble in the
Mm-hmm.
past. They're athletic, they're quick, they have length, and they shoot a lot of threes. Those are the things that Purdue has had some problems with,
Mm-hmm.
you know, throughout all of time. Because those are things that all basketball teams would struggle with if you're facing an opponent
Correct.
who's long,
Right.
who's quick, and can shoot the three. So to be able to take care of a team like that and beat them pretty handily, be in control almost the entire game was really surprising to me. Um, I, I'm not saying Purdue is going to make the Final Four,
How
but
about if Purdue goes to Marquette and wins?
yeah, I mean that's another
Just lay the
that.
bet down, right? Just national
I
title Purdue
mean,
team.
I already put money that they were gonna win the Big Ten.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Kind of
I mean,
soft, but that's
I
fine.
got good odds on it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I'll take that. But yeah, I mean, if they go into Marquette and win, we're gonna have a whole conversation because that would just change the entire trajectory. So obviously, new rankings will come out prior to that Marquette game, I believe. Um,
Mondays? I think
yeah,
Mondays.
yeah.
That's right.
I mean, so what do we think this Purdue team is going to be?
7,
Okay.
if not higher. I think it's early enough in the season where there's not
Yeah.
really
You
marquee wins. There's not a ton of them.
no.
Kentucky and
No,
Duke
you
played,
said
obviously.
yeah, you can make a big jump.
But like team that went to national title with a player of the year candidate just stomped all over Alabama. Didn't stomp. It wasn't a stomp. It was just like
No.
it was a non-fluky win. Like
Yeah,
it was a solid win, which
for
I think is
sure.
probably maybe even more impactful than a stomp.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think overreacting to it is totally valid, especially because a lot of people nationally probably only have seen that game.
Yeah.
And if you watch that team, like that's a top 5 team.
Yeah, for sure. For
They just
sure.
beat a top 5 team.
Exactly. Exactly. So, any final thoughts before we head out for the evening on this game against Alabama or Purdue going forward?
I had one, and it was going to be another question for you. Oh, what was your worry about Jacobson being injured before this game, and what is it now?
I mean, I think just the way we've seen this Purdue team play, the last decade plus, the offense really needs a guy, not just the team really needs not just a guy down low who can play on offense, but they also need a guy who can be a rim protector on defense. The defense generally funnels people into the lane knowing that they can stop them, knowing that they've got a rim protector there, a guy who's been, generally been 7 foot plus, who can clean up things. And to take that away, you're suddenly playing a different style of defense. You're
Mhm.
maybe asked to play a little bit of a different role. And I think to have to do that on the fly is quite the change. Now, seeing the way Purdue responded against Alabama, I am slightly less worried. I
Mhm.
mean, obviously, I want more out of Will Berg. I want him to be more productive. But if we get Trey playing like that each and every game, if we get Caleb First playing how he's playing against Alabama, then I think it's much less of a worry. I mean, is that your thought as well, or do you think differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was less worried than most people anyway. Um, just because I feel like I think Jacobson's ceiling this year was a little overstated,
For sure. Yeah.
and I it's mostly like I have more faith in First than maybe even he deserves. Maybe that's fair. Maybe like it's not a
You
logical
are
feeling.
you are his number
Yeah.
one cheerleader, I'd say.
So there was some of that. I will say there were a couple layups that are just too easy. And that's a byproduct of having no rim protection.
Hmm.
There were a couple layups where like you could envision Jacobson just being there and erasing them.
Yeah.
And that stuff matters. But like I just think this Purdue offense is so good. In a way, and I literally mean it when I said earlier, like I think they have three avenues to being an elite offense. And I think when you're talking elite, that erases worries elsewhere. You can be an okay defensive team if you're elite on offense.
Yeah,
And I
sure.
think Purdue has been so far this season and has the potential to be elite on offense. And when you do that, I I I think it's just fair that the equation changes. And at that point you really need one of two things every game, and that's either protect the ball. One of the If you protect the ball, rebound, or play good D. And like you need like one and a half of those things.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot easier when you only have to do some of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you heard it here, folks. Casey and I have already booked our tickets and flights to San Antonio. So we'll see you there for
Riverwalk
the Final
City.
Four. That's right. We'll see you on the Riverwalk. Till next time, folks. Boiler up.